and I know the clapping is there to support. My very gentle advice is sometimes that's counterproductive. Just a bit of advice. Councillor Renai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally support what's been put up here, and I want to thank the presenters for what they've had to say. You know, in the future, we will be embarrassed by saying we are the most affordable living city in the world. I predict a tsunami of homeless, 55 plus to 60 people coming to this city in the next couple of years. We already know that the homeless in Auckland has doubled already. My concern is this: while I've heard this morning we've talked about a sector, there's another sector I don't think actually reaches your table to talk to you. And as the sector of people out there who've rented all their lives, who've rented with Housing New Zealand, who've had 3 or 4 children, who the children have left the nest, and now there's 2 of them in this house, both unemployed, on a benefit. Housing New Zealand wants that house back for young couples coming through and need that house. Where are these people going? To rent a house is $500 plus per week. If you're getting $550 in your benefits, how do you live? We have a serious problem that's going to hit the road soon with us. And I know internationally they're talking about this type of situation, not just here, but overseas as well. And I sat and I looked at the Tamaki Regeneration Project, Madam Chair. They got 2,800 social houses given to them, plus $200 million. I believe all they're going to provide is 2,800 social houses, and the rest is going to be profit-sharing business, pure business, where they can get 3 houses on one of those sections. I haven't seen any direction to them or anybody else in this line saying you must provide something for the pensioners, because they are going to make money out of this thing. They're going to build very expensive houses. They're going to sell for more than 800,000, I can tell you that. So where in this can we do something? I see the opportunity. I see the opportunity how we can do this. It's not a matter of financing, it's a matter of leverage against the land we've got to build. This is a business that's going to pay itself over time, because they're going to be paying some rent for these properties. So when are we going to start focusing on doing this in a manner for our people that count? Do we want to be embarrassed in the future with the huge number of pensioners homeless in Auckland? I say no. I would be very embarrassed that I sat around this table if that ever happened. So I strongly support it, and I ask you all to support this, because we've got to find a solution to a problem that is coming head on to us, that right now I don't hear anything around this table saying we have a situation that we've got to resolve. So I'm asking you humbly, we have to find solutions to it, Madam Chair. And I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions that I think that are probably the domain of Mr. Quinn. He can possibly help me here. When the Auckland plan was being developed, there was some discussion around the focus on youth and whether that would be at the expense of trying to prioritise those policies that I think we're debating today, and whether or not we needed to have greater specificity around the elderly in our community. And there were a number of amendments that were put up at the time, giving some higher weighting to the elderly in the Auckland community. Can you tell me, given where the Auckland plan sits at the moment, with the budget, with the Auckland plan refresh, how that's shaping up, and how we can, because I suspect that this is going to go through unanimously today, but what I'm wanting to do is to make sure that there is a really comprehensive approach to this, and that we, in the care of the elderly, that it is not going to be ad hoc. So we can actually look to the budget, the Auckland plan refresh, and make sure all of our policies are going to flow out of that seamlessly. And I share the view of the Chair that governments of both the right and the left have been, frankly, not as engaged in the partnership that they need to have with local government on this issue. So I'm interested, just as we've been ambitious in the transport projects that we have adopted, knowing that there will be other funding partners in the delivery of that, how can we ensure that the ambitions that we have for the care of the elderly in our community can be properly expressed in our council documentation, but with a meaningful intention of developing better partnerships with government?
I think firstly, I wasn't here for the original plan, as you know, so I wasn't for those debates at that time. I wasn't a part of. But I think the key thing is some of the debates you're having today is about being clear to officers about the balance you're expecting, and the words that Councillor Casey are asking for expresses a higher bar, perhaps, than the bar before. I think what we as officers need is clarity when we get to debating the balances of where our resources are put in a crude way. So that's the first piece. But look, the team, the reason we need so many people involved in the Auckland plan is because it cuts across the huge breadth of what we're accountable for. And as the refresh team work through the refresh of that, we will absolutely take the guidance we have and the situation analysis we have, which includes all the complexities of the growth and those things, and we will refresh the plan around that guidance in context of where we are. So in a general sense, it's that, and that's why I think the world's most livable city to me is a great guide, because the livable word is such a strong word, I think, to guide how you decide the balance of all of these things, because it's, as well as I do, the finity of resources is a real thing. How do we incite the market around us? How do we allocate our resources well enough on balance to achieve all of those goals? So I can't give you it's that one thing, because if there was that one thing and was a magic pill, we would have all done that, and you know as well as I, there's not one thing, but we are working through all of those things as we review the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. And Madam Chair, I guess as somebody who put up a number of amendments during the development of the Auckland plan around getting some sharper focus around elderly, while it's really important to have that focus on youth, this is, I think, part of what we've got to be able to be more responsive to when we do that refresh. I do hope that this can be adopted today, and I commend those who have put it through in terms of a notice of motion. We have a very real responsibility to the elderly in our community, but that does not necessarily translate to the ability of the Auckland Council, unless government intends to change the legislation under which we work, to be able to fully fund these things. So I think it is yet again one of those issues that we need to have a much more sophisticated discussion with central government with, and I would hate the elderly, and it's very much the forefront of my mind at the moment. We mustn't allow these to be issues that polarise us as a council. This is something that I want to see councillors working across the divide on, and making sure that there is the necessary provision. So I hope councillors can support this today.
Can I just add then, as you raised the central government, is we're working a lot with the various agencies around housing in the wide sense, but we're very clear that this is an issue that's layered in many ways, and housing for older is one of those many layers. So we're very concerned, I guess, that we don't bundle that up into one high level thing, because I think the detail gets lost. So we're working through both the housing in a wide sense, but also the older people, affordable, all of those things. Again, it's about finding
I think in terms of the evolution of Auckland, there are so many issues. Yesterday we had a workshop on greenways, and when you think of the huge numbers of partners that fit in this, but getting a strategic objective and getting that articulated in such a way that it can be deliverable. Housing is much the same. It isn't the responsibility of any one agency, but that's where leadership and maturity in terms of being able to have a meaningful conversation with all of the parties, but the party that I want to see really being engaged, because general taxation is there to fund this, and we can do that in partnership with central government, but it needs to be something promoted better by ourselves.
I think that is a really good point, actually, Councillor Fletcher, and I think that gets to the heart of this, the need for us to have a really gritty discussion at finance and performance about how we engage with central government once we understand the financial contributions that are expected. I think that gets right to the heart of the discussion, so let's look forward to that. Now, we've had 3 speakers for. I'm going to ask 4 speakers against, and given that, and then we'll go back to the mover. We will have lots of opportunities to discuss this. We don't need to have the whole debate today. So, Councillor Brewer, you're going a speaker against.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Speaker against might be slightly hard.
I don't know if he's
What I want to speak against is the timing of this and the context of all this. Sorry? No. And I was called out by Mayor Brown on the Auckland City Auckland City Council decision. I think I want to put some context in it because it's something we can learn from. We often around this chamber, and I've heard it for 5 years, cite that decision, but we never reflect on the outcome. And can I remind people that some here probably think that some flash Freds came in and bought that housing stock, but it was the 5th Labour government that offered to buy that housing stock in 2002, and it was for $83 million. There were 1,542 units, and the idea here, what I'm trying to accentuate, was it was a great outcome because 75 million from Housing New Zealand was then pumped in, invested in refurbishing and upgrading these units, and there are plenty of case studies afterwards where the pensioners that were interviewed, profiled afterwards, said they were pleased that government was the tenant, was the landlord, not Auckland Council, because Auckland Council, City Council, was not going to invest at that rate, 75 million over 5 years. They were also, pensioners were also given a lifetime guarantee by Housing New Zealand of tenure. And so we can cite that decision, but we need to reflect on the outcome, and I think that's relative for this because this is a major policy shift, and I reflect on Dr. Bruce Hucker, who was a strong advocate for council ownership and having a role from the previous Auckland City Council, and he said back in 2002 that he would like to see the extent of the central government council partnership boosted. And I think that is an important conversation. Dr. Hucker also said, Mr. Brown, Your Worship, for your reference, that this was, the 2002 decision was a win-win. It provided, quote, pensioner tenants with security, access to income-related rents, improved accommodation, increased the stock of publicly owned and affordable rental housing in the city in great need, more rapid improvement of stock of accommodation in turn would improve the quality of life for tenants, said Mr. Dr. Hucker. And again, I think that, yes, as Dr. Hucker asked for back in 2002, there does need to be a major philosophical and policy discussion with central government on this, but I don't think it's in the last 5 months of this council. I think this is something that we need to hear from the mayoral candidates on, that we need to hear from the councillor candidates on, and the public need to give a fresh mandate on this as to whether we should maintain or whether we should increase our ownership and involvement. So for me, I'm not necessarily for or against this, but I am against it being discussed now. It's a major policy turn that has potentially significant LTP implications that have not been explored at any level. I respect the fact that it's come through as a notice of motion, but I really think that it deserves the mandate of the people come October the 8th, and then for the new council to make a decision in and around this. And it might have been based on a public mandate that Mr Banks had in 2001, which he enforced in 2002. It might be a public mandate that goes the way of this, but it might not. And I think we owe it to the next council and to the security of our superannuitants in Auckland to know just exactly where this is heading, because I'd hate for this to be changed, and then for an incoming mayor and council to change it again. So I think for the sake of 5 or 6 months, when the new mayor and the ministers responsible sit down with councillors and discuss their policies, that might be the time to change the housing action plan. Changing it now, 4 or 5 months out from a local body election, which is such a major philosophical change with budgetary implications outside the LTP process, I think is inappropriate. So I'll be voting against it on those grounds. Thank you.